Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Facebook Live with GBMC. I'm your new host, Brandy Proctor, and today we're having a really important conversation about sexual assault. If you didn't know, April is Child Abuse and Sexual Assault Month, and we're talking with the program manager of GBMC Health Partners Safe and Domestic Violence Program, Laura Clary. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
Now, remember, guys, you can ask us your questions throughout this conversation, and then we will answer them live. So, Laura, we're excited to have you here with us. We understand that you are America's most amazing nurse. Can you tell us first about that distinction?
Yes. So about 2 years ago, my husband actually nominated me for a competition that was put on by Prevention Magazine and the Doctors TV show. And I was in the top 5 finalists, so I got to go out to New York and meet the other amazing finalists in the competition. And then about a month later, I was flown out to Hollywood, where they announced on the Doctors TV show that I had actually won the competition.
Wow,
So it was an incredible experience, but I always like to say, you know, I'm just one person that does this work, and I have a whole team of amazing and incredible nurses that work with me.
Well, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
So now we want to talk about sexual assault. You can answer some questions for us about the difference between sexual assault and then sex abuse.
Sure. So sexual assault is any type of sexual contact or activity that is done without the explicit consent of the victim. And typically we think of this with our older populations. Child sexual abuse is any type of sexual contact or activity that is done on a child by someone who is in the position of authority or has care and custody over that child. So whether it be someone who lives in the home, somebody who's a family member, a regular presence in the home, or even a teacher or a coach or somebody who has even temporary custody over that child.
Now, how common is sexual assault, sex abuse in our area?
Unfortunately, it is fairly common. We are right on par with the national average that about 1 in 4 women will be a victim of sexual assault at some point in her lifetime, and 1 in 10 children will be a victim of some form of sexual abuse before the age of 18.
Wow, now how can you recognize it in kids? I mean, what are some of the symptoms of someone who's been a victim of sexual assault or child abuse?
Sometimes it can be really difficult to recognize these signs because a lot of times these kids, this is happening to them over a really long period of time. So if you start noticing that your child's behavior has changed, if you notice that they are disinterested in activities that they previously enjoyed, if you notice that they don't want to go with a particular family member or someone who takes care of them, and if your child says something to you, you know, if your child openly makes a disclosure to you, you really need to listen to them and to believe them.
Is that an issue with parents or caretakers or family members maybe not believing?
I think so. I think sometimes, and we've heard it before, where people say, you know, kids have these imaginations and kids make things up. And we always say when a kid makes a disclosure about that, it's very serious and it needs to be taken serious. And I think the best way to, you know, make sure that you can have that conversation with your child is starting it early. Start talking to your kids early about these types of things.
So what do you do if you think that your family member or a friend of yours is a victim of sex assault or sex abuse?
So I think the best thing you can do if someone comes to you or if you suspect someone being a victim of sexual assault is to just be a really great supporter, to believe them, listen to them, let them know that nothing they did made them deserve something like this to happen to them. A lot of victims blame themselves for what happened, and so being there to hold their hand and to listen it's really important, but also knowing the resources that are available so that you can help to point them in the right direction.
And so what are you doing at GBMC to kind of help get the word out about this problem?
So at GBMC, we do a ton of community outreach. Actually, within the last year, we hired a full-time position of a community outreach coordinator so that this person can really reach out to different agencies and community organizations and schools to get the nurses out in the community really talking about this problem that we have, as well as all the services that are available. We've kind of looked at different populations where we really felt needed to be hit pretty hard with this community outreach. So high schools, we have been getting into a lot of them that we never got into before, and agencies that provide services to adults with disabilities. Because those are, at-risk populations.
So if somebody found themselves in this situation, are those some of the services? What are some other things that you guys offer there at GBMC?
So we are a 24/7, 365-day a year. We're always open. Our doors never close. We offer medical forensic services. So we have forensic nurses that are always available. They respond into the hospital anytime a patient comes in that has been a victim of sexual assault, child sexual abuse, domestic violence, and human trafficking. The nurse can work to make sure that that patient gets the appropriate medical treatment while also conducting what we call a forensic examination, which is where we take pictures of any kind of injuries and we collect forensic evidence, which is then packaged that we send to the crime lab. In addition to the forensic nurses, we also have victim advocates that respond in, and they're also available 24/7. So even if the patient may not go the route of wanting evidence collected from their body, they are able to meet with one of our amazing and compassionate victim advocates that can really provide some emotional grounding and some crisis counseling, and again, help linking them to some long-term counseling services in the community.
Do you guys run into that there is some shame associated with it, and then maybe they don't want to kind of move forward?
Sometimes we do, and a lot of times we could spend a lot of time speaking with the patient, making sure that they understand that this is not their fault. But we also want them to feel in control. We want them to feel in control of their own health care and support them along that process. So we make sure they know all of the different options that they have, and then really just walk alongside them as they make those decisions related to what route they want to go as far as their health care.
So if someone decides that they do need help, do they just show up to the emergency room at GBMC?
Yes, they can show up at the emergency room. Once they get to the emergency room, they'll meet with the triage nurse who will just get basic medical information, and then that triage nurse will immediately alert the SAFE team. And the SAFE team, a lot of times during the day, we're actually in the office, so we can meet with that patient immediately. And then after hours and on the weekends, we always have on-call nurses that make it to the hospital within 45 minutes to an hour.
And do you have to be a Maryland resident to take advantage of those services?
No, you do not need to be a Maryland resident. So we never turn patients away, no matter where they're from, no matter where the assault took place. If they come through the doors at GBMC, we welcome them into our program.
What about people who might be concerned about the cost? Does insurance pick up what you guys do there with the SAFE program?
No, this is a free service, so it's 100% free and confidential. When a patient comes in, oftentimes we don't even know what their insurance is because we never bill for this service.
So if there's one thing that you could tell someone who was struggling with after being sexually assaulted, what would it be?
The one thing I would tell them is you're not alone, and that you didn't deserve this, and that we're here to help you if you need us.
And does GBMC offer services for children as well?
We do. So we not only have a SAFE program that can accommodate older patients, we also have SAFE nurses certified to care for pediatrics. So our youngest patient was under a year old. So we see patients from all different ages. In addition to having the pediatric forensic nurses, we also have a Children's Alliance, which are social workers that can also respond in and kind of do the same role as the advocacy, making sure that that child is safe, making sure that they connect with Child Protective Services and they really have a safe place and a safe discharge plan before we let them go from the hospital.
So you guys recently had an event there. Can you tell us about it? It raised money for this program. So how much money did you raise? Where did it go?
So we had a walk a mile in their shoes, which was a 1 mile walk around the GBMC campus. We encouraged everyone to wear red and red Converse. We actually changed the name this year from Walk a Mile in Her Shoes to Walk a Mile in Their Shoes to be more inclusive of all the different patients that we're seeing that come through our program. We raised over $90,000 thanks to very generous donors in the community and businesses that really supported our cause, and over 400 walkers that came out to support the cause as well. So that money helps to make sure that our program is always running smoothly, that the nurses can make sure we have the nurses on call available to come in, as well as purchasing things that we can give back to patients coming in seeking treatment. So sometimes our patients come in with only what they're wearing, and unfortunately we have to take that for evidence sometimes. So being able to give them a new outfit to wear home, toiletries if we're putting them into a shelter, and little things that we take for granted, being able to have funding to purchase those it's incredible.
Right, we actually have a question from one of our viewers. So Dennis says, my friend was assaulted and I'm struggling with how to offer support. What can I do?
So I think the most important thing to do, again, is to let your friend know that you are there to support them and that you believe them and that they're not alone in this. And it's really difficult sometimes as a supporter and trying to be a good supporter that you want to push that person into doing what you think is the best thing for them. But really the best thing for them is allowing them to have some control to make the decision about when to get help when they need it. Let them know that GBMC is available if they would need any type of service, and that they can call us even if they're not comfortable coming into the hospital. They can call us and we can do a telephone consult as well.
What should somebody do right after an assault?
In my opinion, I think someone should come immediately to the hospital. The sooner you get to the hospital and meet with a forensic nurse, the less chance that any kind of potential evidence that you may have on your body is disrupted. So everything that you do when you change clothes, if you go to the bathroom, if you eat, if you drink, and it can all potentially disrupt evidence that we could collect. So the sooner you can get to us, the better. But you do have 5 days from the time that you're assaulted to come in and seek treatment for a forensic exam.
So what is that evidence that you collect? You mentioned clothing.
So we collect clothing. We speak with our patients in detail. We allow them to tell us exactly what happened. Again, we kind of go at their speed. So they tell us exactly what happened to them. And then based off of that history that we obtain from the patient, we'll determine where we may find injuries that we're going to need to address and photograph, and find potential biological evidence from that assault that we would collect with swabs. And in addition to collecting evidence and writing our report, we also provide antibiotics preventing against any kind of sexually transmitted infection that may have been transmitted, as well as offer the Plan B for our female patients that come in.
Right, so I know there is a time window with that, but is there a length of time for people, who report a sexual assault? Like, is there a window?
So there's a window for evidence collection. So right now that window is right around the 5-day mark. We take every situation into consideration and we look at it uniquely, but typically we stay within 5 days or 120 hours, because that's when we're going to be able to collect the most evidence, and that's when we can administer those medications. So right now the gold standard is at 120 hours or 5 days. But if someone comes in past that time, we certainly will still meet with them and link them with one of our victim advocates that can speak with them and provide resources.
So we talked about the shame that's associated with it. What if you don't report it or haven't reported it in the past? Now what do you do? How do you go about reporting something now?
So when a patient comes into GBMC, it is their option of whether or not they want to report to, say, police. They are not required to, and this is when we're talking about sexual assault. Sexual abuse is very different, but with sexual assault, the victim has the right to come in, have a confidential forensic exam. We'll collect all of that evidence and do everything exactly the way that we would if someone was working with police. And then we'll package all of that evidence under an anonymous number, and it will be stored for 20 years. And this way the patient really has time till they feel comfortable coming forward and making that report to police. And again, we're there to support them through that process. So if at that time they're not ready, they can always call us back at a later date and we can help facilitate making that report to police when they are ready.
So you said you hold on to it for 20 years.
So we'll collect the evidence, we'll package everything, and then we send it to the Baltimore County Crime Lab or whatever jurisdiction overseeing the crime. And in the state of Maryland, those kits are held for 20 years. And the kit will not be tested unless the victim comes forward and says that they would like their evidence to be tested.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So let's talk about the healing process. What is involved in long-term healing from a sexual assault or sex abuse?
So it's a little bit difficult because everybody is different. We know that what we provide is what we're providing in that very acute stage a lot of times. So while we do some emotional grounding and we do some crisis counseling, a lot of the information that we're giving them at that time, they may not be retaining just because they're in that acute crisis stage. So what we'll do is we'll work with our community partners and link them to long-term counseling. So we always recommend to get in and speak with someone about what happened to you. We don't force any patient to do that. We have a process where we work with Turnaround, who is one of our local rape crisis centers, and we have a process where we can have a smooth transition and a smooth handoff with our, not just our sexual assault victims, but also domestic violence victims that come in, so that we can make sure that they do get linked into the community with someone who they can speak with long term.
And when you talk about victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, it's not just women here,
Nope.
right? Or children. We're also talking about men.
Yes. So we see, we do see men. We don't see them near as often as we're seeing women. I think it's happening more often than what we're seeing. Unfortunately, there is still a stigma that surrounds male sexual assault and that it doesn't happen, boys can't be sexually assaulted, and that's just not true. And unfortunately, a lot of times when men are assaulted, it's way later in the recovery process before they come forward. So oftentimes they're not coming forward within the time frame of us to do a medical forensic exam. But we certainly do see them, and they receive the same exact treatment as anybody else coming through that program.
Now, you talked about ways to pick up on things, especially from a child. How do you determine if they just don't want to go to Uncle such and such's house because he's really strict and he won't let them play Xbox, or if there's something else there?
So I think that's a really difficult question. It's not something that I would be able to determine. So I feel like if there's any type of suspicion that there is sexual abuse or any type of abuse, then it absolutely needs to be reported. If we had a patient that came into the ER and there was any kind of suspicion of sexual abuse or physical abuse of a child or a vulnerable adult, by law we would be required to report it, and then it would be investigated, just to ensure that, even if it's somebody who may be just being too strict, what if it isn't? What if that child really is being abused? Right. So I always say, we can report it and let the, appropriate agencies do the investigating.
So if people want to help you, can they donate items or money to help you do what you do with the service that you provide? So
we accept monetary donations. We have a philanthropy department that works very closely with us, and we also accept product donations of toiletries and clothing. So anything that, if you think about you're going to stay somewhere for a few days and you don't have any money, and you don't have anything that you are used to having at your house. So even if it's feminine hygiene products and a toothbrush and toothpaste and clean clothes and clean undergarments, we accept all of that. So the only thing that we ask is that the clothing and undergarments that are donated are new.
And so where can people go to learn more information about the resources at GBMC? So
they can go to the GBMC webpage. The specific webpage for SAFE is www.gbmc.org/safe.
All right, well, thank you so much for being here with us, giving us all of that information. Again, all of that info right there at the bottom of the screen, gbmc.org/safe.